Hi everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. So, you know your partner is seeing someone on the side, or perhaps you are the side chick or the side guy. This person is betraying you. So, why can't you let your lover go? I'm Donna Anderson, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'm going to explain 10 signs that mean you're addicted to loving a cheater. This is a live streaming show, of course, and I'll answer your questions when I'm finished with this short presentation. So please send them to me as we go along. And you can also use our super chat function to ask your question. So, here's the scenario. You discover that your man or woman is cheating. You know this person is bad for you. Your friends tell you to dump your so-called partner, but you can't. The truth is, you still want what you thought you had in the beginning of the relationship. If the pull is unbearably strong, maybe it's not love that you feel, but addiction. Here are 10 behaviors that indicate you are addicted to loving a cheater. Do you do any of these things? Be honest. Now, in these signs, I'm referring to men, but if your partner is female, everything still applies. Just substitute she for he. So here's number 1. You confront him about the calls in his phone from other women. He comes up with excuses. You know that they're lame, but you accept them anyway. Number 2. He says that it's your fault that he cheated on you, and you agree with him. Number 3. You keep telling yourself that if you could just be more loving, more patient, more sexy, whatever, fill in the blank, he will make you his one and only. Number 4. You apologize for things that you didn't do or say. Number 5. You tell him it's over and storm out, only to call or text him, begging to get back together. This happens time and time again. Number 6. You keep trying to prove that you're better than the other woman or women. Number 7. You go overboard trying to help him, even though he treats you badly. Number 8. When your family and friends question his behavior, you make excuses for him. Number 9. You stalk him, either in real life or online. And finally, number 10. He promises that this time will be different and he really will end it with her. You make yourself believe him. Again. Those are the 10 signs. So, how does this happen? First of all, understand this. All romantic love is addictive. Dr. Helen Fisher, who is a biological anthropologist at Rutgers University, says that anyone who falls madly in love behaves just like an addict. In her scientific articles, she explains the similarities between lovers and addicts. Lovers and addicts are both intensely focused on the reward, which is either your lover or the drug. Here's another one. Lovers and addicts both feel mood swings, craving, obsession, and compulsion. And finally, lovers and addicts both experience distortion of reality, emotional dependence, personality changes, risk-taking, and loss of self-control. Dr. Fisher says that romantic love can be a constructive addiction when your love is returned. But if your love is not returned, if you are rejected, the addiction can be highly destructive. Dr. Fisher explains that when your love is rejected, your first reaction is to protest. You obsessively try to win back your partner. You may even feel more passionately in love than when you were together. Why? Because you have bonded with your lover. All love is about bonding, the psychological and emotional attachment that you feel towards your partner. The psychological bond forms in the beginning of the relationship when you feel the giddy pleasure of a new romance. What happens when you discover that your partner is cheating on you? You may be angry, but you will also feel fear and anxiety, mostly about losing your relationship. Surprisingly, this does not drive you away from your lover. Dr. Leanne Leadham is a love fraud author and an associate professor of counseling and psychology at the University of Bridgeport. She explains that fear and anxiety actually strengthen the psychological bond that you feel for your partner. When your partner is a cheater, this becomes a vicious circle. First, in the beginning, before you know about the deception, the pleasure of your new romance creates a psychological bond. Second, your lover cheats on you and you feel fear and anxiety, which strengthens the bond that you feel. And then third, you work to get back together. Your partner finally relents. You kiss and make up, which strengthens the bond again. This vicious circle goes round and round and round. Bonding, then cheating that causes fear and anxiety, then reconciliation. With each turn of the wheel, the psychological bond that you feel gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The vicious circle of cheating and then reuniting can lead to what we call a trauma bond. Now, as we well know, some cheaters aren't just men or women who can't make up their minds. Some cheaters are exploiters, sociopaths. Dr. Patrick Carnes wrote a book called The Betrayal Bond. He says that exploitative relationships create these betrayal bonds, which are also described as trauma bonds. This occurs when you bond with someone who is destructive to you. Dr. Carnes also explains that trauma bonds are addictive. You feel a compulsion to continue the relationship despite the adverse consequences. You are obsessed with the relationship. If you recognize yourself in this description, you are probably already aware that your involvement with your partner is not healthy. So, what do? Well, you treat it like an addiction. You go on the wagon by breaking off the relationship and having no contact with your partner. Now, this may seem daunting. How can you possibly cut your lover out of your life? Well, the answer is to take it one day at a time, just like in a 12-step program. And if you need support, seek competent help or therapy, or come to Love Fraud. So that's the presentation for tonight, and I'll soon be answering your question. Looks like we have a few here. And as I mentioned before, we have implemented Super Chat on the YouTube show, which gives you the opportunity to support Love Fraud's work. And I really appreciate all the donations that we've received so far. So if you'd like to donate to Love Fraud, you can just use the $sign that's below the window where you type your comments. And also, if you'd like to donate a tax-deductible contribution to Love Fraud, there's a link in the description below this video window. And also, I invite you to subscribe to this Love Fraud Lessons channel, and please press the like button if you like the content. So, let's take a look at the comments here. Dylan says, thanks for the videos. You're very welcome. I'm glad you find them to be helpful. So, CG says, I have pushed away truly lovely men because I was looking for a quality of excitement with them that I'd only experienced in destructive relationships. How can I find excitement and love? Well, that's a really interesting question, and the thing to understand is to really look at what you are interpreting as excitement, okay? Because sometimes it might be doubt that's making you excited, the anticipation of wanting the relationship, the idea that this person seems to be playing hard to get. Really analyze what it is that you're interpreting to be excitement. Because, when we're talking about relationships, there's a lot of excitement in the pursuit, even if you're a woman, even if, you're not supposed to be necessarily pursuing. They talk about, letting the guy chase you until you catch him, which is actually a pretty good idea. But, really analyze what it is that you're feeling as excitement. Is it kind of a fear that he's not going to call? Is it, trying to figure out how you can possibly arrange things so that you get together again? You really want to look at that and figure out, is it really excitement or is it fear? Is it longing? What exactly is it that you're feeling? Because here's a really good thing to keep in mind, and I've said it before in some of these videos, and this is a good time to say it. Real love is easy, okay? With real love, there might be these, flutters of excitement in the beginning. There always is when you get together with somebody. But with real love, with someone who's a good match for you, you don't have this sense of desperation. You don't have this sense that, wondering if he's going to blow you off, or wondering if he's going to show up, or, you don't get disappointed. It just doesn't happen. When it's a good connection, it just kind of flows, and there's no game playing. So that's an important sign. Make sure that what you're interpreting as excitement isn't necessarily game playing, because there's excitement in games, but that's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is an easy, peaceful, relaxed connection. So that's what you're looking for. Now, as far as you mentioned also how to find excitement and love, a real connection is exciting in itself. So one thing that I would do is to continue to work on your own emotional healing, because the more that you can release any of the pain that you may have experienced in the past, and I've talked about that in quite a few videos, but if you can release the previous betrayals, the previous disappointments, and you get all that negative energy out of your system, it just helps you be centered. And when you're centered, it helps you to find a relationship that is also centered. Okay. Okay, so Jenny asks, how do you stop the trauma bond? There's a lot of healing involved with that. Trauma bonds can be, they're often very deep. It probably is not just a trauma related to whatever the current relationship is. There probably is something that came before that was also traumatic, that made you vulnerable to a sociopath and a trauma bond. Because what happens is that, all our lives we have these things happen to us, we have these experiences, and they create wounds within us, pain, betrayal, grief, disappointment, and usually we don't deal with it. I mean, this is just the human condition, especially when they happen when you're young and you're trying to make your way in life, and you don't quite know how to react or how to be yourself or anything like that. So we often have these experiences and that were painful, and we've never dealt with the pain. So these wounds create an energy that sociopaths latch onto, which consequently sets us up for an involvement that causes more trauma and more pain. So what you want to do is to figure out how to release the pain of whatever the most recent experience is, and then also whatever came before. So what I like to suggest that you do is to, just allow yourself to bring to mind something that happened and really let yourself feel the experiences that you may not have make yourself feel the emotion attached to the experience, which you may not have done before. And it may come up, you may need to cry, you may need to yell and scream, you may need to pound pillows or something like that, but the idea is to get it out of your system. And this can be a fairly long process. It could take quite a while because we all have layers and layers and layers of pain and disappointment and betrayal. And so the more you can let it go, the more it gets out of your system. That's how the trauma gets released. You can also work with a therapist or some other counselor. It is good to find someone who truly gets what you're talking about, because as I've said before, our research shows that about half of therapists really don't understand what goes on in these relationships. But you have to do the work. It doesn't just go away. And so what I would suggest is that you make a commitment that you're going to work on your internal healing, you're going to do what's best for you, and then you go through the process. And it'll be a bumpy ride, it'll take time, but you can come out the other side and really be whole and centered and able to go fully into a new relationship. Okay. So Lou says, I love your channel. Thank you. Okay, so Laura says, why do many counselors not understand these kinds of pathological relationships? Aren't they educated on trauma bonding and ASPS in college? The short answer is no. Especially counselors who studied quite a few years ago. No, they have one lecture on personality disorders and maybe one lecture on psychopaths, and they talk about serial killers, and the information just hasn't been out there. The knowledge related to antisocial personality disorder, psychopathy, narcissism, it's all fairly new. Dr. Robert Hare wrote the book and developed a test called the Psychopathy Checklist Revised, and that just came out in the mid-90s. So it's only been 20 years since, or 25 years, that people were even beginning to talk about these personality disorders. So and it's taken a long time for the information to percolate through academia and through general knowledge. So quite frankly, people just didn't know. There wasn't any discussion about it. I mean, I launched Lovefraud in 2005, which was 16 years ago, and I have seen a tremendous increase just in the past 16 years of the awareness of these disorders. So I would say that there's more of a possibility that people are being educated in these disorders now, those who are going to counseling programs or psychology programs. But people who were educated like more than 10 years ago, they didn't talk about it. So they have no information about it unless it happens to them themselves. And from what I can see is that all the best counselors for working on these situations are people who have experienced it directly. In fact, I've spoken to many counselors who found out that their training was deficient, found out that it did not prepare them for their own experiences. One of the things that they teach in therapists is to be unconditionally accepting of people. Well, I've had therapists who, got involved with a sociopath, and they kept being unconditionally accepting, and they just kept getting more and more beaten down because of that. I mean, their training actually worked against them. So hopefully it's coming around. I do know of some professors who are doing a good job of teaching more about what these relationships are like, but it's just taken time for people to get the hang of it. Luckily, however, we have the internet now, and you can do your own research, and you can come to Lovefraud and chat with other folks who know exactly what you're talking about. So that's a good thing. Okay. So Deborah makes the point this should be taught in schools, and yeah, absolutely. I've actually done some presentations to high schools and colleges about these disorders because, prevention is the best thing. Once you get involved with a sociopath, there's going to be damage, there's going to be destruction. It's just a matter of how bad it is. If you are smart enough or lucky enough to catch on that, things are not good early on, you might be able to escape with minimal damage. But, a lot of times that doesn't happen. And the biggest reason is because we don't know that they're out there. We don't know what the behavior looks like. So consequently, we get fooled. So education is key. Education means, first of all, knowing that they exist, which is actually the biggest problem because most people do not know that they exist. And then recognizing the warning signs. And then, as I've said before, learning to trust your intuition, because your intuition will tell you that something is off, that something is bad, that you just got a bad feeling about somebody. But, we're not taught to pay attention to our intuition. But our intuition was baked into our DNA over millennia to protect us from predators. That's what it's for. So we all just need to learn to pay attention to our intuition, and it will protect us. Okay, well, that looks to be the questions that we have for tonight. So I thank you all for joining me here on Lovefraud Live, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks a lot.